Good day, Forefront. My name is Reverend Venida. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Special shout out to our virtual community joining us from all around the globe. We're so happy that you've decided to worship with us today. Thank you all for coming. I know that over the last couple of days, you all have received content warnings with regard to today's sermon topic, and if you did not receive it via the email or via text messages or the WhatsApp chat, I'm going to share it before I preach. So April is Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month, and my sermon today will include themes of sexual violence, rape, and other sensitive topics which may elicit feelings of distress and other deep emotions. The sermon is not appropriate for children, and everyone is encouraged to take care of themselves in a way that feels most comfortable for you. The prayer corner will be open during the service. Benny is free to pray with you and for you if you so desire it at any point. Josie Allen from Safe Horizons Special Victims Division is here in the lobby with us to offer resources. She'll be speaking after the sermon to be able to share more resources. And following the service, you will have the opportunity, our virtual community, to have a discussion with Deacon Foxy, and Ray will pop in as well, who is a counselor. So we feel supported on all ends today, and we thank God for that. So let's take a couple of deep breaths. Let's breathe in again. So throughout the sermon today, you'll actually hear me use different terms. You'll hear me use victim, and you'll hear me use survivor, and then you'll also hear me use victim, survivor. Sometimes people refer to themselves as a victim because they were victimized and violated, and they feel like no matter what, they'll always be a victim. There are those, however, who feel that because they've gotten through the ordeal, they're a survivor and they're no longer a victim. And then there are those who embrace the terminology of victim, survivor. On any given day, they could feel more of one or the other. So it's important for us to honor and acknowledge terminology depending on where people are and depending on their experiences. Just to let my faith community know, I don't come to this sermon lightly today or carelessly. I come as a secondary survivor, perhaps like some of you. Maybe there may be victims in the house and survivors here, those who have been directly impacted by sexual violence. Our leaders have done all we can to provide as much information beforehand so people can know about today's service. So as a progressive church whose focus is to ensure that we are addressing the concerns of those who are at the margins, today, during Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month, I think it's important that we take the time to show our love and concern to past and present victim survivors of sexual violence. Those who may believe that their lives, because of the tragedy that they experienced, may feel that their lives are ruined. But there's healing available today. It's also imperative that we work towards prevention efforts, which include education and ensuring we have proper policies in place to ensure our community is safe and protected. Why is this important? Because sexual violence continues to occur all around us, and given the startling statistics, many of us have been impacted by the violence. Sadly, many of us still remain silent. The impact of one person's assault goes beyond the survivor and can hurt families and relationships and entire communities. The more we refrain from talking about it, the easier it comes to avoid this topic altogether. And then, when we are silent, when we refuse to acknowledge this topic, then it makes it easier for offenders to perpetrate this crime. So let's understand the scope of the problem. My main source during today's sermon is going to be the National Sexual Assault Violence Resource Center. So nearly every minute, someone in the U.S. is sexually assaulted. Every 9 minutes, that someone is a child. Nearly a quarter of men in the U.S. experience some form of contact sexual violence in their lifetime. Nationwide, 81% of women and 43% of men reported experiencing some form of sexual harassment or assault in their lifetime. Sadly, 1 in 5 women in the United States experienced completed or attempted rape during their lifetime. While women and men of all sexual identities experience sexual violence in their lifetimes, women reportedly experienced a substantial sexual violence burden, especially bisexual women. Statistics say that almost 80% of bisexual women and over 56% of bisexual men reported experiencing contact sexual violence in their lifetimes. Almost 60% of both lesbian women and gay men reported experiencing contact sexual violence. And then, as it relates to our transgender and non-binary communities, almost half of all transgender people have been sexually assaulted at some point in their lives, and these rates are even higher for trans people of color and those who have done sex work, been homeless, or have or had a disability. Those are startling statistics. And the estimated lifetime cost of rape is $122,000 per victim. That's a burden. So I came to this work some years ago. I was trained as a sexual violence advocate in Bergen County, New Jersey. And as a result, I've been able to care for victims of sexual violence for over 20 years. Much of that work happening on college campuses. I've supported college students during judicial hearings, community members at hospitals as they have endured very invasive evidence collection kits. I've been with those who've reported their accounts to special victims units and others who've boldly marched through the streets, held candlelight vigils, and shared their stories of victimization and empowerment and healing during Take Back the Night events. They've come from a variety of races and ethnicities and genders and sexualities and other backgrounds and experiences. There've been a carjack victim, a dementia resident living at a nursing home, someone on a business trip who was held hostage for an entire weekend, and so many others. This month, during Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month, I honor those I've known and the many unknown victim survivors who continue to suffer in silence due to shame, embarrassment, and fear of victim blaming, which is rampant in our society. This month, I honor people also who are very, very close to me, family members who've been victimized, siblings, and even my mother, who was raped by a boy from church, which resulted in the birth of my oldest sister. My family has granted me permission to share their stories to ensure communities would be enlightened on this topic. Today, I'd like to go to Scripture, where there's another story, the story of Tamar, which gives us a biblical account of rape, which has themes that are relevant today. Tamar's story is found in the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 13. In terms of context, David was the reigning king over the United Kingdom of Israel and Judah during this time. And he had many children from many different wives. He had a daughter named Tamar, who was still a virgin, and she had not been engaged to anyone during this time. She was noticed by her half-brother Amnon, who goes on to say that he was infatuated by her. He loved her. He wanted to have her. So much so that he became sick over it. And he shared this with his cousin and good friend, Jonadab. And Jonadab devised a plan for Amnon to be able to take advantage of Tamar. And he said, listen, cuz all you need to do is play like you're sick. Tell your father, King David, and then get Tamar to bring you some food so she can eat from your hand. And then he did just that. He pretended to be ill. He asked his father to have his sister make him some food. And then King David goes to Tamar and tells her, bring your brother some food. So we're picking up together in verse 10, and we'll read through verse 22. Then Amnon said to Tamar, bring the food into the chamber so that I may eat from your hand. So Tamar took the cakes and she had made and brought them into the chamber to Amnon, her brother. But when she brought them near him to eat, he took hold of her and said to her, come lie with me, my sister. She answered him, no, my brother, do not force me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do anything so vile. As for me, where could I carry my shame? And as for you, you would be as one of the scoundrels in Israel. Now therefore, I beg you, speak to the king, for he will not withhold you from me from you. But he would not listen to her, and being stronger than she, he forced her and lay with her. Then Amnon was seized with a great loathing for her. Indeed, his loathing was even greater than the lust he had felt for her. Amnon said to her, get out. But she said to him, no, my brother, for this is wrong, and sending me away is greater than the other that you have did to me. But he would not listen to her. He called the young man who served him and said, put this woman out of my presence and bolt the door after her. Now she was wearing an ornamented robe with sleeves, for this is how the virgin daughters of the king were clothed in earlier times. So his servant put her out and bolted the door after her. But Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the long robe that she was wearing. She put her hand on her head and went away, crying aloud as she went. Her brother Absalom said to her, has Amnon your brother been with you? Be quiet, for now, my sister, he is your brother. Do not take this to heart. So Tamar remained a desolate woman in her brother Absalom's house. When King David heard of all these things, he became very angry, but he would not punish his son Amnon because he loved him, for he was his firstborn. But Absalom spoke to Amnon neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon because he raped his sister Tamar. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let's just take a minute. So this ancient story combines elements of incest and domestic violence and is related to factors surrounding sexual violence today. If we look at this story, Tamar was sexually assaulted by someone that she knew, not by a stranger. And this is typically how sexual assaults occur. Most of the time, almost 90%, someone knows the person. A coach, a pastor, a teacher, a relative. And the violation took place in the home by a family member, not in a dark alley or a desolate park. Oftentimes, when it comes to sexual violence, we encourage people to keep them safe from stranger danger, which is significant, 10%. However, what are the things that we can do to keep ourselves from people that we know, right? Oftentimes we teach sexual self-defense and things of that nature. It's hard to do self-defense against your classmate, against someone that you've trusted, against someone that you care about. Tamar was exploited through one of her attributes, her kindness and her upbringing to be hospitable, to take care of others. And this is what offenders typically do. They get someone at the point of their vulnerability. And then Tamar said no, and her no was not respected. There was no consent to this act, to this violent act. And let's be clear, she said no. But even if someone doesn't say no, it still doesn't give them the right to take advantage of someone in that way. Silence means no. Maybe means no. A drunken yes is still no. Whenever there's a minor, it's still no. And clearly where there's no consent, it's a no. Now, when she sought help, she was told to keep quiet. How relevant does that sound today? Don't make a fuss. Don't tell anyone. This is a person of influence. We don't want to ruin their reputation. They're my firstborn. I'm not sure what's going to happen to them. They're going to lose their job. They're not going to be able to take care of their family. Remain silent. And then what happens is the victim survivor suffers in silence. And they're not able to get the help and support that they need. And then another example of how this ancient text is relevant to today is that the process for achieving justice and restitution was taken out of her hands. When someone is victimized and violated, we help to empower them by helping them have choices and resources and ways to get help for themselves. No one asked her how she was doing. It doesn't show what she wanted to do, but it became men's business. Nothing was carried forward with her agency. And as a result of this story, Absalom winds up killing his brother, right? Doesn't necessarily check in with his sister. I mean, he told her to be quiet, and he took care of it himself in a way that he wanted to. And in the end, it was the perpetrator for whom King David mourns, not Tamar. If you had the chance to read on into what happens, David is so upset that he tears his clothes and he mourns very, very deeply for his firstborn. But we don't see anywhere in the text where he has any compassion or where he cares for what happened to Tamar. It seems the end of Tamar's story actually happens without her. It's almost like her life was ruined and nobody cares. And quite frankly, we don't necessarily know what happens to her after this. Again, ancient text, still very relevant to today. But the good news is, the fact that we are actually sharing Tamar's story today could be considered an act of renewal. It conveys that her life, even though she went through such a horrific act, that her life was valuable. And we are saying by sharing her story that her life mattered. Tamar's voice can be reimagined and reclaimed through an act of subversive memory. Feminist theologian Elizabeth Schulzer Fiorenza describes a process of retrieving lost voices of biblical women through historical imagination and recreation. She seeks to reclaim the dangerous memories of women in early Christianity, transforming them into active agents against patriarchy. She argues that memory must be reconstructed to challenge the dominant-based structures of the church and society, reclaiming history as a community of equals. This is what we're doing today by sharing this story. Has anyone heard of the play Ruined? I saw it some years ago. It was absolutely phenomenal. The performance was held at the City Center, and it's a play by Lynn Nottage, and it won the Pulitzer in 2009 for drama. In fact, she was also the first woman to win the Pulitzer Prize for drama twice. Now, the play was developed from interviews Nottage conducted with women in the Congo, highlighting their experiences with violence and trauma. The play follows Mama Nadi, a businesswoman running a bar/brothel in the Democratic Republic of the Congo during Civil War. She shields women who are victims of brutal rape and violence while navigating dangers from government and rebel soldiers. Mama Nadi balances her business interests with the safety of her women, often playing both sides, while the violence of the war inevitably breaks out into her own safe sanctuary. The play examines the resilience of the human spirit, the cost of neutrality, and the moral ambiguity of survival, as well as the exploitation of women's bodies in war. Nottage promotes that women who are ruined by war still have hope. It is their resiliency that helps them to keep going, even when it seems all hope is lost. My question to us today is, who will cry for the Tamars of our day? For those who feel their lives have been ruined as a result of sexual violence. Who will disrupt the power and control which creates a platform for violence to take place in the first place? At the core of sexual violence, of these types of violence, are power and control. What can we do to make a difference here and abroad, in our churches, in our homes, in schools, in war-torn countries, in those areas that have experienced natural disasters, and in the prison industrial complex? How will we respond to the Tamars of our day? Victim survivors should no longer have to suffer in silence. As a church community, we can actually love them to life, to renewal, and to resurrection, whether the violence happened recently or many years ago. We can create space for their stories. We can reclaim their voices through subversive memory and other prevention initiatives. What does prevention look like? It looks like what I'm doing now, sharing a sermon on this issue. It looks like education and training and bystander intervention so that people speak up when they see something, when they hear something. It also includes policies and holding offenders accountable. It includes resource sharing. It includes things like our people policy team here at Forefront, which was newly formed to help us be able to strengthen how we engage in community with one another. It includes things like Q Christian Fellowship's sexual ethics policy that they have in place on their website. And that'll be another resource that we share, in addition to a slew of resources that we've already shared. Earlier, I shared some very tragic news about members of my family. I wanted to let you know that the good news is that even though their lives may have felt like they were ruined in that moment, when my mother, at 15 years old, shared her sexual violence with my grandmother, her mother, she was believed. And this is the first thing that we can do with survivors, is believe them. And my grandmother told the authorities, and that person who assaulted my mother actually wound up going to a juvenile detention center. And this was in 1945. So if it happened then, it can happen now. And we can clap. Amen. And the good news is that my mother went on to be a nurse administrator, and she was able to teach us, her daughters, to love God and to use our voices and help be a source of comfort for other people. And as it relates to my sister, who was conceived as a result of a rape, she went on to impact her community as a community organizer. She advocated for the underrepresented. She received an award from the NAACP, and she went on to truly, truly make a difference in her community. Her life was not ruined. And as it relates to my sister, Faith, who was 20 months younger than I am, while many of the rapes happened within my presence and I had no idea, when she disclosed these assaults to our family, we supported her. And we supported her then, and I support her now. And she wrote a story, and a poem, and I'd like to share it with you. And one of the things, before I share Faith's poem, that I wanted to share is that when she was in middle school, there was a teacher who whispered in her ear when she was writing something that she was not a good writer. And the teacher actually ripped up her paper. This same sister was just notified that she was nominated to be the poet laureate of her community in Northern California. So I close my sermon with I Advanced by Faith Alfer. I was 5, fully alive, silenced inside, whispering secrets of deception. Hush, don't speak a word. Then it occurred. Treasures stolen, unspoken. I was 10, again, New York City. The view was pretty. We trusted him. Horrible grin. Ashamed and afraid, but I prayed. I was 12. In church, I searched. I hurt. Lines divided, so misguided. Weakened by the deacon, Lee. He was a trustee. Many more. I kept score. I've grown up. They were corrupt. I focused forward, onward. Wasn't my fault. The assault. My pain, I gained. I danced. I advanced. Today, I have survived and still fully alive. Thank you, Faith.